Hi everyone, this is question 7 on the chapter 5 mylab homework. People with Z-scores 2.5 or above on a certain aptitude test are sometimes classified as geniuses. If aptitude test scores have a mean of 100 and standard deviation 30, what is the minimum aptitude test score needed to be considered a genius? All right, so first of all, let's make a picture of this here. Let's get a new page. So it doesn't necessarily say we have a normal curve, but I mean, you can pretend you've got a normal curve. All right, so if we had a normal curve, then it would look like this. The mean, once again, it said the mean was 100 right there. All right, so 100's in the middle. Standard deviation, it says, is 30. All right, so 30, so 130, 160. I'll just go up and down 2 standard deviations for this one. And then from 100, minus 30 is 70, minus 30 is 40. Now, it really helps to have a visual of this to sort of get a rough idea of the answer. And so now it says, anyone with a Z-score 2.5 or higher, meaning 2.5 standard deviations above the mean. All right, so let's put the Z-scores underneath. All right, so if someone's IQ is 100, that means they're exactly average. So their Z-score would be 0. If someone's Z-score is 130, then that would be 1 standard deviation above the mean. So that's a Z-score of a 1. And then 160 is a Z-score of a 2. All right, and the -1 would be 70. -2 is 40. Okay, so for this particular question, it says if someone has a Z-score of 2.5 or higher, meaning 2.5 standard deviations above the mean, then they're quote-unquote a genius. And so what is that number? So from the picture, you can see that 2.5, well, if the Z-score was 2, then their IQ would be 160. If their Z-score was 3, then that would be 190, just 30 points more. And so you can take this with a common sense approach where you can just say to yourself, well, 2.5 is exactly halfway between 2 and 3. So the IQ scores would have to be exactly halfway between 160 and 190, which would be, what would be? That would be 175. Okay, so actually that's your answer right there. However, the numbers don't always work out so nicely. For example, what if the standard deviation had been like 28.3 and the Z-score had been like 2.37 or something? So if the numbers don't work out nicely, then you can use the Z-score formula. Let me show you how this works. So Z equals X. They use Y in the book, but I'll use X. Doesn't matter what letter you use, actually. Okay, so the number you're interested in minus the mean divided by standard deviation. Now, on other questions, they tell you the number. They say so-and-so's IQ score is 112, and you put it in, and then you minus the mean divided by standard deviation, and you get the Z-score. But on this one, they give you the Z-score. So the Z-score is 2.5. Okay, the X is what we need. So X is just X. That's the variable. That's what we have to solve for. The mean is 100. Standard deviation is 30. All right. Now, you don't have to solve it this way if you want to just think, okay, well, you take your mean and you add, 2.5 times standard deviation. That also works, but don't be afraid of a little algebra here. So if you want to solve it algebraically, you just do the opposite. And so the opposite of divide is multiply. So step 1 would be you would multiply by 30. Okay, so technically you multiply both sides by 30. That's the way that algebra teachers always teach it. So you multiply by 30. The 30's cancel on the right. And then you have 2.5 times 30. You can use a calculator if you want to. 2.5 times 30 is 75. Okay, so that's 75 equals X minus 100. Because think of it like this. 2.5 is a Z-score. You multiply that by 30 because it's 2.5 standard deviations above the mean. And so the mean minus 100 would have to give you 75. Okay, and then the next step, what's the opposite of subtract? the opposite of subtract is add. So you add 100 to both sides of your equation, and you get 175 and equals 2x. So there you go. A foolproof method for finding the x, no matter how crazy your numbers are. 175, and that's the same that we had from doing this visually as well. 175. All right, and so one last thing I want to mention is you can sort of rearrange your formula if you wanted to. You could say, well, you always, no matter what your numbers are, the step one is always you times the s by the z. So you could write z times s, and then your step two is always add the mean. So then plus the mean equals to the x. And so if you wanted to, you could just plug your numbers into your rearranged formula. 2.5 times the 30 plus the 100 would give you the 175. If you want to do it that way, that also works. And that's let's go back to the question and let's type it in now. So 175. If your IQ is 175 or higher, then you're quote unquote a genius. And then click the check answer box. Here it is. Excellent. Thank you for watching.